My guest AD Singh is one of the pioneers of the concept of standalone restaurants in India. In fact, he can be credited with many firsts. Think Party Lines, Susie Wong, Olive Bar and Kitchen, to name a few. In an industry where it's difficult for hotspots to sustain success beyond 3 to 5 years, AD has cracked the code. Stay tuned to Pathbreakers. I am Neha Bothra. Thank you so much, AD, for having us here at Olives.
It's my pleasure, Neha.
You know, you have a very interesting journey. You started as an electrical engineer.
Yes.
Then you had corporate stints at TCS, Cadbury as well. And then you also worked with an NGO, I think, for about 1 year. You were also a food writer. So at what point did you discover that the food business is the best business to be in?
My sister got married and I'd thrown a boat party for her off the gateway of India, which everybody just loved it. But it was very hard work because I had to do everything myself, you know. There was no organizations doing it. And so when I was looking, I thought, hey, there's an opportunity here. And that's how I became an entrepreneur. And I started doing parties on boats. I called my company Party Lines. I met a few corporates, hotels, and it took off reasonably well. It's hard work, but it was a service that people wanted. And you know, this was in 88. And India was just coming to some level of affluence. Cable TV was out there. We were seeing a better world. And so that was, I got started really, luckily, just the right time. I have no particular skills and training, even in the restaurant business. But India had very little for a more westernized audience like us. So I got very lucky that my early forays into it were very well received. 2 years into Party Lines, I thought that why don't I open a place just serving desserts and coffee? I'd read about something like that in America, and I thought, there's nothing like that here. My mom lent me 50,000 rupees. And with that, what I did was I went and spoke to, 20, 30 restaurants that used to shut by the early evening because they were in the business area. But finally, somebody, Mr. Katzrak, had this place called the Parisian Cafe at opposite Bombay House. He used to shut every day at 6. And he said, sure. So we worked out a deal, and me and my team would go in at 6. We'd pretty it up and make it look like the cafe vision I had in mind. And because we were serving only desserts, we call it just desserts. A lovely name, and people, really caught on. And we served coffee, desserts, and jazz music. But I wanted a way to create an identity for the place, to keep the wrong kind of people out and get the right kind of people in. And that also really helped in creating the right brand and image and feel. And it was a sensation because my generation, we had nothing. We used to go out for a fun night out, you know where? To 5-star hotel coffee shops. That's all we had. And when I opened our first pub in Bombay, people started having chilled out spaces, standalone, not expensive to go to. And we were an overnight sensation.
Great.
And so that's how I got started into the restaurant business. Yeah.
So it's been 30 years since then, right?
Yes, 33 years this year.
So you started with 50,000 rupees and you have over 14 brands now under the Olive umbrella?
Yeah, I think we have about 10, 11 brands
All right.
under the Olive umbrella.
All right.
And some are bigger, like Olive itself with its subsidiaries, about 8, 9. The Fatty Bao is 6. Soda Ball of Nawala is 8. Monkey Bar is 3. So like that, we have different
All
numbers
right.
here.
Everyone talks about the 3-year jinx in the food and beverage industry, where surviving beyond 3 years is quite a challenge. So how did you crack the code? I'm really intrigued. I mean, Olive has been around for 22, 23 years. How have you sustained the success? How is it so popular even today?
The restaurant industry is very hard for new people, which is why for entrepreneurs, they say it's the #1 industry where the rate of failure is the highest for first-timers. I, of course, had already been in the business 10 years by the time I started Olive. And I was aware of the short shelf life and the challenges. So when we completed about 2 years odd, I started talking, as it so happened, to the Italian cultural center, the trade centers, and we planned for 8 months. And in those 8 months, I saw business falling steadily. But as we turned 3, we did possibly the best festival that I think India's ever seen, because we planned it so well and so deeply. It was an Italian festival, ran for a whole month. There was a lot of excitement and buzz around it. And that turned Olive's fortunes from dipping, went back up, and then stayed like that for 20 years more. Of course, it's been a lot of work, and it's interesting why you've managed. Audiences change, and you must relate to the new audiences. When we were about a year and a bit old, a close friend of mine from Canada, he said, "Hey, why don't you try and make one night special?"
Okay.
Now that concept wasn't here that time, but it was there in the West. So we started with Thursday nights because Friday, Saturdays were doing okay anyway. So the buzz spread. We did it for 3-4 Thursdays in a row, and it was a sensation. And ever since then, Thursday nights, Olive's owned Bombay. Then they start connecting with the managers. They play, "Oh, nice," they have a munch. Then they come for Sunday brunch. Then they convert to regulars. So which is why we managed to stay fresh and successful through many, many new generations over many, many years. We haven't had the same success with this Thursday night in other cities. But, we also learned the game better. The kids actually, of those who've been our regulars when we started, have also really enjoyed coming here. I don't know if it's because of the old memories, connecting with what this brand stands for.
You do have a special connect with the place. I mean, you would have hosted, I think, some of the leading celebs, CEOs, politicians, athletes, and this place would have witnessed a lot. Public spats, romantic proposals, impromptu jam sessions. What are some memories that you remember vividly even today?
We've seen many funny stories and moments over the years. 2 of the biggest stars we've ever had a public spat right out there. Of course, they've made up long since. And then one of our biggest stars, Salman, I guess I can name him, it's a sweet story, had a spat with his then girlfriend. And she came in one night with a bunch of girls, and she was sitting here. He was at the bar with his brothers and some friends. And through that night, he kept trying to woo her. But how? In that film style. So he put a rose between his teeth and he hopped across the table smiling. And the whole restaurant couldn't believe it. They were like awestruck with what's going on. One night, Shah Rukh was speaking on the stage and the audience was full, and they were couldn't believe it. And I kept expecting him, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 to leave because he's so busy. He talked, I'm not sure, an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's fantastic, I think I'm blessed. I just stumbled into restaurant. And because of that, one, it's been a hell of a journey, and I've seen so much and made friends.
How has the business evolved over 20, 23 years? Specifically, the time, when you found your foot in the industry, when you became a trendsetter of sorts.
Because there's so much demand, The dining out scene is so much better. There's so many more options, so many more cuisines, so many more experiences. The big factor driving it now is also a lot of youngsters are getting into it. And they know and they connect with what they want, like I did at that time. And they're opening new things. We're still not where even Asians, many cities, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Shanghai, etc. are. But it's much, much better, and it's growing very, very rapidly. What you and our viewers will also see coming up is the focus on beverage. To date, it's all been about going out for a good meal. But increasingly, people are really caring about their cocktails, their drinks, and people are offering much better.
Yes.
So you're going to find an explosion of good bars as well.
So how's the company now valued?
When COVID came along, everybody was valued maybe at 0 because your valuation is about your future. Nobody knew.
Sure.
Some of the world's biggest restaurant companies collapsed. And even in India, we feel about 15-20% of the restaurant groups didn't survive. So it was a very difficult time for us and for everybody.
Sure.
Our company made it through. I myself was able to put some of my own funds into the company. And we got a lot of support from our investors, from our landlords, from our vendors, from our teams, because we had been looking after them so well for so long that they gave us support. They knew others would be gone and they would lose a good tenant or a good boss or a good investing company, as the case may be. And Neha, after each stage of lockdown in India, we didn't know what was going to happen. But what did happen was consumers came back with a bang. They had been locked up for so long, they were keen to go out. And funnily enough, I think they were keener than ever before to live life. Not to save up for 30 years later. By and large, that gave the industry a big support. We had, of course, tightened costs during COVID, so we were very slow to restart building them. And we created a lot of fun new things so that the customer would want to come and visit the old places or the new places. And as a result, we've actually had very good performance post both lockdowns. Mm-hmm. In fact, the last 12, 15 months have been our best ever.
Okay.
Substantially, And I see a very good few years ahead for the F&B industry in India.
So with the uptick in profits, have you also seen that translate into overall valuation for Olive? If you can give us a sense of that.
We're not in the market currently. We're focusing on coming out, creating value, which right now I'd say we are more valuable than ever before. On the multiples that our current investors bought in at over 5 years ago, I'd say the company value is about almost double from then to now. By April 23, we should be valued around a 500 crore company. So currently the Olive Group, we're making more money than we need for our own growth. And you see, we're a debt-free company.
Yes.
So all our growth plans, our refurbishment plans, we can meet ourselves. All right. We do have private equity investors with us currently and financial investors who'll be with us a long time. But our private equity investors will be exiting soon. That's been 5-6 years. And then probably new investors will come in. Mm-hmm. We feel we're too small still to think about going public. So we're not looking at that as a solo company. But there is some talk of maybe merging with a couple of other good companies which own also very exciting brands in the market, and then going public as a joint company.
Okay.
So over the next year or two, we'll explore different options and see what our next step is.
Given the pace of disruption in every industry, F&B is no exception really, given the adoption of technology, how do you see the F&B industry evolve over the next 10, 15 years?
Firstly, if you look at just Asian cities, they're a good model for us here. People like in many parts of Southeast Asia eat out many times a week.
Sure.
The ratio is much less here. It's increasing. So therefore, the overall numbers and growth in the F&B industry is going to be good.
All right.
That gives all of us a lot of confidence. As we've seen through COVID, the delivery market boomed, and that's spawned the birth and growth of cloud kitchens. A lot of people are struggling, are not able to make money. The cloud kitchen industry in India is still at its early stages, but it has huge potential, and there will be many players, many groups, many big names that will grow and be very successful in that industry in India, across the country. Technology has been what we're all looking at and wondering. And as you've seen through the aggregators, there have been game changers. Yeah. For the delivery sector, everybody now goes to one of the aggregators and orders rather than doing it directly. The aggregators are quite keen to get into the dining in space as well. But the model that they have is the restaurant industry feels is very destructive. Not just disruptive, but destructive for us, because the diner changes from going somewhere based on his experience, possibly to where he gets the best deal. And the relationship between the diner and the restaurant gets broken.
Sure.
So that's actually a source of worry for the industry. Mm-hmm. And we are talking and trying to work with the aggregators to find a model that's a win-win for them and their investors, and for us for the long term.
What are some of your learnings from trial and error over the past 3 decades that you'd want to pass on to upcoming budding F&B entrepreneurs?
Now, that's a very good question, Neha. I always urge to entrepreneurs that when you're starting off, please don't put in your own money and your family's life savings. Start a restaurant, even if you have good ideas. At the beginning, take a franchise of a set brand, learn what they've learned over a long time, or take a partner on board who really knows the business. Give up some ownership, it's fine. And only after you learn the business, a couple of years later, think about your own ideas and getting started. So that's my first advice to entrepreneurs: is begin carefully. Secondly, this market has evolved a lot. Now it's becoming a bit like it is overseas, where the number one factor, as they say, is location, location, location.
Yes.
So put some emphasis onto finding the right spot. Thirdly, very important, as I've learned over the years, in India it's not easy to settle disputes through courts. Much better to settle them through relationships, So you really need a fair person for the key relationships, which are in our business the landlords. I often think of my relationship with the different landlords as almost like a husband and wife. You're bound together, you must get along, you must agree through journeys that have their ups and downs. And thankfully we've survived in a large part because of the relationship and the support we've managed to build with them. Be sure that you can trust the landlord for the way forward. That'll give you a lot of ease as you go along and as you grow. Lastly, very importantly, start your business as an entrepreneur through your P&L. I'm not that. I'm very intuitive. Take help to create it right, understand what you need to do, then begin your business. It'll help you be, that much more successful than you would otherwise.
Who are some of the upcoming stars you are willing to bet on?
I love, for example, the Bombay Canteen Group. They're very smart, very passionate, experienced, and I love what they're doing. I think the sky's the limit for them, for example. I like a group called Passcode, which is brands like Jamun, and I think they'll go very far. I think the Indian Accent Group, which was sleeping for a long time, after Indian Accent opened the lovely Cormoran in Gurgaon, now they've opened the fabulous Hosa in Goa, and I believe many more products are coming out of their stable. So that's also going to be one that's going to add a lot to the F&B space.
Would you like to collaborate with any of them?
I'd be happy to collaborate with all of them. I like the people leading it.
Okay.
Their values are similar to mine. And where the opportunity makes sense, I think we could grow together. I, fun enough, just this morning reached out to 2 of these 3 groups because there's some great space available next to one of my very successful restaurants. And I think their brands would complement us there. So I'm trying to make that happen.
You've brought a lot of global cuisines into India. And do you have plans of taking India's food and culture overseas to international markets? Is that part of the game plan?
So one, of course, we see there's a lot of opportunity here. Here we understand the market well. They know us well. So that's maybe, let's say, easier for us to grow with. But we've been looking at the overseas market, particularly Dubai and London, for some years now. And we have been in very serious talks with 2 investors based out of the Middle East. One's a group, one's an individual. And I think that within the year, you will see our first foot overseas happen. Right. My vision is to first start with our Indian products.
Okay.
Because that is where the market is more ripe. We know it well. So we have a brand called Soda Bottle Openawala. It's Indian, got our flavors and our taste, but new. And I think that could work very well in international markets. So that's the first one we want to take. Then we created a bar. We were India's first gastropub called Monkey Bar. Monkey Bar has about 50% Indian food done very interestingly, and otherwise global food. And it's a bar with great cocktails. That I think could go very easily into Dubai. Because everybody loves a fun night out and with new food that we are doing. So these are the first 2 products we're looking to take outside India.
You spoke about your overseas plans, but in India, if you can
Sure.
take us through what some of your growth
Sure.
plans are.
So post-COVID, I've been firstly taking the company into relooking at our own brands, because we built these brands through lots of hard work and they're very well known in the Indian market scene. They're a little old now and we haven't been able to put money into them for a little time. So we're putting money and efforts into our existing brands. Monkey Bar is getting a full new design, a new food menu. Some of the others, we're just refurbishing them and making them look fresh and new. Bringing in some new chefs to work under our existing chefs to create new dishes. And as I mentioned earlier, with a huge focus on beverage. And we're seeing some nice opportunities for new places that we want to do. For example, in Goa, we have a very successful olive. There's a lot of space around it, which we want to expand into slowly and grow the olive further and more. Similarly, in other cities, we have existing spaces with more space available around them, which we think is a no-brainer. We should open and grow there.
Yes.
And then there's some new brands, new products coming. We're going to open a full-on olive in Calcutta and in Gurgaon. We are opening an exciting new monkey bar in Bangalore. It's been shut there for 3.5 years. And we're opening a brand new brand which will come up in Bangalore in about 5 months for the first time, which we think is fairly scalable. I can't talk about it yet, but you'll see things shortly.
AD, thank you so much for speaking with us. It was great hearing your insights and all the anecdotes that you shared with us of your 3 decades in the industry. Thank you so much.